So you're going to install and then I believe today you'll be learning what's up?
All right. So the presentation is gonna start now. You guys feel like quiet down. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So today is going to be about Photoshop, but first, before I talk about that, I also want to introduce the safety animation. So it's an animation that. So safety animation is a 40-second animation that our team is going to produce. The creative sub-team mostly is going to be working on it, but also we have a safety officer who's going to be helping us with it as well. And it's basically, like, the general gist of it is that it's just, we're talking about how Roboco values safety in our team, as well as first themselves are going to release a prompt for the safety animation, and then we create the animation with, like, that's going to be the topic mainly, and then we're talking about both that and safety, like, combined, and, like, here's more details. So the prompt that they're releasing this year is faster, farther, and safer. So they released, like, an extended, discussion about it, or description. So basically, well, it's just written over here. As we leap into the future of transportation, innovative, efficient, and sustainable technologies will help people move about faster and farther than ever before. And how can we ensure that these new methods of transportation are safe for people and our planet? So obviously it's going to be about, like, they gave a prompt, but we also have to talk about safety with regards to that prompt. For the 2022 Safety Animation Award, teams are challenged to demonstrate through animation their vision of the future of transportation and how safety is important in the design of these transportation technology. Consider including your team's robot as a character in their animation. So we can have, like, various, well, obviously the animation can have, like, almost anything in it. So having, like, characters in it would probably help to, like, convey different ideas, or depending on how you guys want to do it. So here's some formatting details about the animation. It's 40 seconds maximum. That's like a hard maximum. We can't have any more than that because it's going to be played at competition, so it has to be kind of short to allow for, like, you know, actual matches at the competition. It has to be submitted as a video file. There are, like, some file extensions, but that's not, like, a big deal right now. All of it has to be animated with these exceptions, or there's some exceptions. Live video needs virtual or augmented reality animation in it, and you can't have any live video of people because obviously, like, the main focus is animation itself. And we need written permission for using any copyrighted music, not explicit music obviously, and it needs to meet every requirement that they have for it to even be considered for the Safety Animation Award. So this is the suggested workflow that we usually do, or that would be the most optimal way to go about doing it. Usually for the safety animation, what we do is we make a script first about what, like, everyone's going to be saying, because it's going to be animation plus audio. So people will be talking about the ideas that we want to convey first. And then we plan out the timings, because it's only 40 seconds, we have to plan it out properly. We have to make sure everything is as efficient as possible. And then we get the voice line, people saying what they want. Last year is officers speaking, but it can be whoever is, like, working on the animation itself. And then we animate individual sections with, like, different members working on different parts. And then at the end, after everything is done, by the way, the animating will probably take most of the time. Then we combine the sections and add music, and then we publish. So this year, I believe the deadline for it is December 2nd. So we should start working on it sometime soon. So, at the end of this meeting, I'm going to put a form onto Slack. So everyone who's interested in working on the safety animation can sign up to be part of the forum. Also, some people here in the animation class at the academies are also going to be joining, because the teacher, Ms. Stone, who was very nice, she requested some of her students to join us as well, I'm just going to post a form on Slack, and if you're interested, you can join and help us work on it. It'll mostly be like the creative stuff team working on it, but like anyone can contribute if they want. Okay, so now on to the actual presentation for today. It's going to be about Adobe Photoshop. So Photoshop is an application that is used to both edit and create images. Editing, obviously, it's very likely that every one of you has heard of this. It's like almost a ubiquitous term, kind of like Google. You can use it to edit pictures, make them like anything you want, because pictures are typically made of pixels, and you can just alter the pixels to show whatever. And also create images, which is creating graphics. And it works in rasterized graphics, which I'm going to explain right after this. It's very capable. It has a lot of powerful tools, which is why it's so well known. It's really popular for doing this kind of work. And this guide, as opposed to using it for the editing side, it'll be mostly used for the creating art side, like digital graphics. Like instead of altering images, we're going to be like creating graphics. Like last meeting, I showed you like pictures of like logos, merch drawings, and things like that. That's the kind of thing that we'll be doing here for the creative sub team. So raster versus vector. So I just talked about this the last slide. So raster images. Raster is kind of another word for just like images that are made of pixels. So if you zoom into a raster image very closely, eventually it'll kind of become blurry, no matter how high resolution it is, like even 4K, 8K. At some point you'll see all these pixels. Whereas in a vector image, at no point will it ever be blurry, because the drawings in the images are they're defined by mathematical curves, which basically makes it so that like it'll follow those and not what the pixels look like. If you want to work on vector graphics, you can also use Adobe Illustrator. I won't be going over that in these workshops, but Adobe Animate, which I will be going over later, that works in vector, because for animations things need to be slightly more smooth. And things like logos, which we use for this club, obviously, the Roboloco logo. Since they're so widely used for various applications and logos need to be slapped on tons of different things, those are usually made in vector. So yeah, even though I believe, yes.
So we would use vector images in Adobe Illustrator for the laser cutter, the vinyl cutter, the water jet. So there may be things that creative would use vector images for.
So things like that, the reason that we can't use raster for those is because raster is made of pixels, and for the CNC machines that Mr. Jimo was talking about, like laser cutters and things like that, they have to follow very specific paths to cut things out of material, and in order to follow those curves, like to absolute precision, you need a vector, like mathematical functions, to describe the path that the CNC machines take. And using something like a raster image will only be an approximation for those kinds of things. So, okay, if you guys want, you can take out your computers right now and like open the app. It's not like absolutely needed, but like it's gonna be a lot of information. So it's gonna be better if you do take it out, so you can just get familiarized with it. If you don't already have it downloaded though right now, you should probably work on getting that done soon. But after this presentation, we're just going to have like a project where you can just get yourself familiarized with it after. So.
I blame it on you,
Okay. Hello? Okay, I'm gonna be continuing the presentation now. So, so to create a new document file, or like to start working on like a new project, you just open up the application. On the left side, there'll be a create new button. Just click that, and then typically the only settings that you'd want to change are the size and resolution. The others don't really matter as much. Like for example, DPI. That's something that you would only change if you wanted to print like an image, because that that has to do with like the size of the image on a piece of paper or like on a poster or something. But the size and resolution is what you usually want to change. The size of the document will change the width and height of the canvas, and the canvas is what you work on, but that'll be discussed later. The dimensions of the canvas is in pixels by pixels. The width and height usually follows like certain ratios. The most common ones being like 4 to 3, like the width to height ratio, 1 to 1, which is just a square, 16 to 9, which is usually for videos, but you can also do it for some images depending on the application, and 3 to 2. And then the resolution, you can typically just keep it at 300. It says the size of the image if it were to be printed onto like a poster or a piece of paper or something, but on a screen it won't have any effect on the project that you're working on while you're doing it. So after you create something, after you create a project, you just click create, and then a new document with these settings will be produced on your screen. So if any of you guys are like currently following along right now, this is what it would look like if you like created a new project. Do any of you guys see this on your screen right now? Yeah. Okay. So this is how the main Photoshop window looks. There are various panels all across the board. So there's the toolbar, the tool information panel, which is on the right side, and then the document switcher, canvas, color creator, layers panels, and others, which I'm going to go into all of these right now. So the canvas, like I was talking about earlier, is the main window that you're going to be working on when you start creating a graphic in Photoshop. It's kind of like a sheet of paper. You just start on it to like draw other things, and it's where the main image is displayed while you're working on it. It has the specifications and dimension that you specified earlier, like pixels by pixels. This is what it's going to affect. So you'll see those ratios in this canvas, and all edits to the images that you make will be shown in this canvas window, regardless of which layer you're using at the time. So for navigating the canvas to move around, because typically when you're drawing something, you want to like move in, zoom out, things like that. Control plus to zoom in, Control minus to zoom out. That's just like typical keyboard shortcuts to navigate pages. And Control 0 to fit the entire canvas to the canvas window. Control 1 to change the zoom level to 100%, which is just a set value. Like you'll typically want to use Control 0 more, but depends on the situation. And if you want to move around the canvas, like while it's zoomed in, you're trying to move to the right or move to the left or something, you hold down the spacebar and then drag. And then if you want to rotate the canvas around, like say you're trying to draw a vertical line, but your lines are more straight when you draw horizontally or something like that, you rotate, you press R, and then you rotate by dragging the mouse across. Okay, so before I move on, there's going to be like a lot of information, and you don't have to memorize all of it, but like, do any of you guys have any questions about anything so far? Okay, I assume that most of you are comfortable with everything so far then. So, layers. It's kind of a simple concept, but it gets a little bit of getting used to if you are not already comfortable with it. So there's just like different layers of the picture that you can work on and edit separately. And they're shown separately from each other. You can hide some and view some to see how some layers look. And they're one of the most important features because you'll be using them all the time if you're working on something complex. Like for example, if you're trying to draw something on a sheet of paper, having all like the pencil, the colored pencil, if say you're using a watercolor paint or something, if it's all on the same paper, at some point it can get like kind of convoluted and messy. If you guys like drawing or like have done art on like papers before, you probably know what I'm talking about. Like it's going to be annoying to like smudge things around and stuff. So layers keeps it so that these things are done separately, and then you can combine them together after, which makes it look a lot cleaner. And that's what typically separates digital art from like traditional art. This is done more like that's how it can be produced more cleanly. So so the sun image that you saw over here is just like a smiley face. So there are multiple different parts to it, and if you could do something as simple as this in just one layer. It's not a big deal. But of course, as it gets more complicated, you'll want to have a lot more layers. So a simple way to think about it is if if there are a bunch of pieces of plastic, because plastic is a clear thing, if you're drawing on a bunch of them that are all the same size, like in the areas where there are blank spots in one layer, the ones beneath it can be seen because it's just clear. So you can draw different things on different layers, and then if you stick them all together, you'll get an image like this. So this is how it would look if they're all separated. And of course, you can hide different parts of it. When the final image is exported, you can hide some layers or keep some, and then it just compresses it all into one like flattened layer. It's almost like merging all of them together. And like some parts of upper layers will hide lower layers depending on where things are drawn and stuff like that. So, do any of you guys see this on your screen? This is, I believe this is in the bottom right corner. Okay. So, this is where you'll see the different layers, like of the sun that I showed you like earlier. There's like the line art, like how the outline of the shape is, and then there's like a smile, the yellow circle, different colorings on the background. So there are different color effects. Oh, you can see my mouse. Okay. There are different color effects. They're not that important to talk about right now. You can just explore them later. And then they just change how the colors on the layer interact with other layers. And then the alpha lock option, that's pretty important. If you want to edit a layer so that only the pixels on that layer are changed. For example, if you want to change a color of something on a layer to another color, but you don't want to draw outside of it, you just click this, and then it only draws on what's already there. That's pretty useful. And the lock option basically makes it so that nothing can be changed in the whole layer. Okay, and then you can select a different layer to work on by clicking on it, and then, okay. You can select a different layer to work on just by clicking on whichever layer you want to work on then. And to rename a layer, you just double click on its name. So, if you want to lock or unlock a layer, like I was talking about in the last slide, you just click the lock icon, and then delete is the task icon, add a new one is plus icon, and create a new group is a folder. And then to hide or show one, it's just the eye icon. Before I move on, do any of you guys have any questions about like the different like details or like how to do some stuff? So everyone is like understanding everything so far, right? Yeah. Okay. Also, after you can just like refer back to it if you're like confused or anything. And also, these things are like easily Googleable too. Like there's a lot of resources on the internet if you're working in like a software as popular as it. So, you don't need to know all of these right now. It's just like something that you'll get more used to if you work on more complicated projects, because there's like obviously a lot of information on this slide. If you right click a layer, it'll show a bunch of new options. A clipping mask is an important one that you might want to know. It's kind of like alpha lock, like I was mentioning earlier. It makes one layer only shown on the pixels of the one right below it. And then the ones on the right, it's not that important to know right now. So, okay. So alpha lock and clipping mask. So this is what I was discussing earlier. So alpha lock, basically it makes it so that on one layer, you can only draw on the pixels that are already there. So like I was saying, Photoshop, typically it doesn't use vectors, it only uses pixels. So there will be transparent pixels on a layer, and there will be the pixels that you drew in. So here's one example. On the left, like what I did was I wrote Robo Loco in purple, and then I locked it so then nothing else could be drawn. And then just scribbling out in yellow will make it so that the yellow only appears on what you already drew. So that's pretty cool. You can use it for a lot of different things. And the clipping mask is a very similar concept because as you can see on the right, there's purple and the yellow is only on top of it and it's not anywhere else. But in this case, with a clipping mask, it uses two separate layers. So like the yellow and purple are in different layers. And then as soon as you apply the clipping mask to the yellow, it only goes onto the purple. So it basically only keeps it on the layer right below. So it's useful for if you're doing things like coloring or, well yeah, typically for like coloring things right below. So now the tools, this will probably go back quicker. Various tools are used because of their different functions. And the toolbar allows you to select between them, but if you want to select between different tools, you can also just press like keyboard shortcuts, which I'll show you. selected by either clicking on it or by pressing a keyboard shortcut. So, the main one that you'll use like to draw things, like not for coloring, but like for drawing, is just the brush tool. You just press B, and then what happens when you use this is if you just move your mouse around while holding it down, it'll just lay down a color. It's pretty simple. There are different effects that you can use later. Like it's like you can change the size, shape, opacity, things like that of what you're drawing. But typically, like the default setting is just a circle. And then horizontal lines and vertical lines, if you want to make them super straight, you can just hold down shift while drawing. Bucket tool, it just fills in an enclosed shape. You can just, the keyboard shortcut is just pressing B, so then like you don't have to press on the toolbar every time. It's just enclosed, it just fills in an enclosed shape with a different color. And the eyedropper tool, so you're working on a project and you're trying to make two parts of the project the exact same color to make it look more clean or something. You just click I, and then the previous part of the project that you're trying to select, you just hold down the mouse on top and then click, and then it picks that color out of the thing. So as you can see here, like there's the logo, Forever logo. I wanted to use the orange in a different part of the image, so I dropped it, and I just clicked on it, and I got that exact color. So the eraser tool is pretty self-explanatory. It's literally just exactly the same as MS Paint. You just press E, and then it erases the pixels from wherever you draw it down on. It's kind of like the brush tool, but it removes pixels instead of laying them down. And then selecting. Okay, selecting is a pretty important like tool that you'll use if you're trying to create graphics. It allows you to specify an area of the project where you can specifically interact with only that area. And then you can draw, erase, or like move things around only in that area, which makes it useful to like not affect other parts of the project. So here are three ways to select. The rectangular marquee tool, I mean the name isn't that important. You just press M and then it rectangularly selects an area of the image. You can, I mean if you guys have Photoshop right now, by the way, you can just like, or if you have it open, you can just like try out these different tools for like working with them right now. So pressing M basically makes a rectangular selection. Pressing L is the Lasso Tool. You can specifically draw like any shape that you want on the image, and then it'll only select that area of the image. And then the Magic Wand tool, it's useful if it's like a large block of color. It'll only select like similarly shaded colors, pixels from that region. So you just click once, and then it selects like all of the pixels of that color. Okay, the Lasso tool is pretty complex because you can, well not that complex, but you can do multiple things with it. So if you want to switch between one to the other, you just right click it and then click a different one. So the regular Lasso tool, you just draw around, kind of like the brush, you just draw specifically where you want to select. The Polygonal Lasso tool, you press down different points on the image, and then you can like specify where you want to select. So it'll kind of make like as the name says, like a polygonal shape selection. And then the magnetic lasso tool, you just lay down points and then it connects between the dots to select it. So the shape tool depends on what what project you're doing. Sometimes you'll use it a lot, sometimes you'll almost never use it. You press U to get to the shape tool. By the way, you don't have to memorize all of these. You can, like, you'll get more use to them later, and then it'll just become like nature at some point, like you'll understand. Different shapes can be created by right-clicking on it, and then it'll show which shape you want to use. Okay, I've gone through a fair amount of tools so far. Do any of you guys have any questions about like any of the tools at all? Okay. The move tool, it's just selected by pressing V. It just moves things around. You just hold it down and then drag it across the screen, and then this is what it'll look like. Free transform tool. This is a very common tool in like across editing softwares. You just press Control T, and then you can do things like a rotate, or you can select things first, and then you can press Control T, and then you can like large, scale down, warp, things like that for a selection, the box will usually show around it to indicate what you have selected. And then if you want to scale something down, like larger or smaller, while keeping the same proportion and not getting stretched out or like thin, you just press Shift. So the text tool is pretty self-explanatory. You just press T and then you can write whatever you want. And you can also pick between different fonts because in the software it'll show a bunch of like predetermined fonts that you can select from. But also you can import some if you, depending on what specific project you're working on. The color picker, you just use this to get the various colors because like from the different combinations of like red, green, blue, RGB, there are over 16 million different variations of or 16 million different like shades of color that you can pick from. The panel is located on the top right, and you can just pick your color from there by dragging around the custom color spot. And the hue and brightness can be changed by just moving around the circle on it. And then you can hold two colors at a time because if you're working at on a small portion of a drawing, and then there are like two specific colors that you're alternating between, instead of picking between them again and again and again, you can just press X, which is pretty useful. And then if you just click on the current color that you have, then it'll just bring up more details. I'm assuming you guys have seen like RGB like color pickers before, right? It's kind of self-explanatory. You just drag around, change around the settings and things like that. So the tool information bar, when you use different tools, since there's so many different settings on Photoshop, it's not just like cut and dry, like black and white. If you like select the brush tool, for example, it'll show a bunch of different aspects of the tool that you can change around. It's located above the canvas, and then it'll the options that you see on the panel will change depending on what tool you currently have selected. Some examples of the different options you'll see, this is just like an example if you're using the brush tool. You can change the brush size, other brush settings, the color effects, the opacity, and then how much it lags behind. And the document switcher is just if you're working on multiple different projects at once, you just select between the different tabs. It's kind of like Google Chrome tabs. You just switch between them. And then Workspace. So the Workspace, since there's so many different panels all across the window, you'll want to, or depending on your workflow and how often you use certain things as opposed to others, as well as what's more accessible to you, on different parts of the screen, you can move the panels around. And there's some preset ones, if you navigate to Window Workspace, you'll see some examples over there, Essentials, 3D, those are just names that they apply to different workspaces. But also you can create your own, so then you can have your own personal workflow. And there's a saving a document. If you want to save a document, you just press Control S, and it brings up different options that you can use to save it at the end. And then typically you'll want to save it as a .psd file. PSD just stands for Photoshop document. They made their own file extension for that. And what that does is it saves all the layers, including all the different colors, all the different settings for each layer and things like that. So as soon as you double click on it, it just brings it back up in the Photoshop application. And you can just continue working on it right then and there. But if you're completely done with the project and you want to export it as an image file, you can just export it as a PNG, and then you just save it as that. Okay, so that was just the introduction. You can refer back to it after. So what we're going to do now, I believe most of you already have Photoshop installed. So just to get yourself familiarized with Photoshop, what we did was we're going to have a mini contest, I guess, but it's not really that competitive. You just try to create a new or create your own version of a logo. It doesn't have to be super crazy or anything. Huh? What?
Create your own logo.
Yeah, for the team. But try to create your own logo, and just the main point of it is to get yourself familiarized with different tools. And you'll also have the next meeting to work on this. And you can just start now if you already have the application open. Did everyone catch that? Neil. Yeah, what's up? Could I get everyone's attention really quick again? Just for like a couple minutes. So like I was talking about earlier, I put these safety animation sign up form on announcements. It's not required to join it, but you can like join it if you want, just to like work on it. So the sign up form is both in the graphics channel and the announcement channel on Slack. So if you want to work on it, just fill out that form. And also, you'll have like most of next meeting to work on the project as well. Did everyone get that?